You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Bold Hearts, Big Moves. Okay, I gotta be honest with you guys. I am super excited about today's guest speaker. I have been chatting with Taylor Proctor for, probably the last couple of weeks, and she just has like the best energy. She's so much fun. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, we are like soul sisters because she is just so much fun. And then also, like, her story is just so crisp. Like, it's just, like, you guys are going to love this podcast. If it doesn't go viral, I'll be surprised. So, just to let you guys know that. But let me tell you a little bit about Taylor. She's the business coach for entrepreneurs who dream of changing the world and envision extra commas in their bank account. Now, if that's you, raise your hand, right? Like, I'm totally going to do that. And yet they find themselves stalled on their journey to success. Also, I think we've all been there to some degree, and that's part of the reason why we've created this podcast. From owning 4 diverse companies to having experience as a CEO, a CMO, a COO, from guiding Fortune 100 companies to helping million-dollar enterprises, Taylor empowers high-achieving coaches, startups, and business leaders to become dominant forces in their industries. And what I really love today is she's going to talk to us about some of those things that she does to help those companies, especially the IMOVE theory that she's created. Guys, you're going to love this. You are absolutely going to love this. So without further ado, welcome, Taylor. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be on as well.
It's going to be so fun. Like, this is going to be a great, great, great episode. So, we just talked a little bit about like you and like some of the amazing things, but that's like just the teeny tip of the iceberg from, some of the things that you've told me. I really want you to talk about like your business journey. I know, and especially like that 8-figure manifesting story. That was like so inspiring to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to share the story. I call it my 8-figure intuition, and it's all about how you can manifest crazy opportunities in your business. Because honestly, it was crazy to have this opportunity drop in my lap. So just like all of us, right? I was just doing my thing, and I got a random thought. And I mean, how many times has that happened to us, right? Where it's just like, whoa, that's weird. Okay. And we move on. Well, the thought that I had was that I could be an 8-figure entrepreneur. Now, my first instinct was, okay, yeah, whatever. And then my second instinct was, wait a minute, how much is even 8 figures? Because we hear 6 figures, we hear like, you hear those like terms all the time.
Right.
I'm like, what is 8? So I had to count it out on my hands. Okay, that's a minimum of 10 million. And then my next thought was, well, how in the world would I possibly do that? So I started doing the math and counting through, being like, okay, well, if I sold X amount of this product to this many people, and maybe if I did a big high end product and sold 4 of those, and I started trying to do all the math, and honestly, it wasn't even close. And I started to get overwhelmed and just like, oh, what am I even doing here? Like, this is a dumb thought that just came into my head. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that happens to so many of us as entrepreneurs. Like, we just have these passing thoughts. We start to get, if we take them to the next level, we start to get overwhelmed and we just let them go, right?
Yep.
Move on.
Yeah. Yep.
And in this case, for whatever reason, right? I was like, what happens if I just forego any expectations about this? Like, what would happen if I just started to believe that I could be an 8-figure entrepreneur and didn't put any limitations, any expectations on how it would happen, when it would happen, where it would happen, and I just started to believe I could be an 8-figure entrepreneur? Like, what would go on with that? So I really had to forego my expectations on how that could happen. So
Yes.
I always love to think too, it's like, okay, if you thought of how can I bring in some extra cash flow, some extra revenue into my business this week or this month, or even extra cash flow to my family this month. We often think of a few things, but we don't think of everything, right? So
Yeah,
you
of
could have
course.
okay, well, maybe I've got more profits coming in from the business. Maybe I have some rental income coming in. Maybe I receive an inheritance. Maybe somebody gives me a gift. We always hear those stories of somebody's like, yeah, I just got this check in the mail. Well, that's not something you ever plan on or think about. So when we need to forego our expectations, it's really wiping the slate clean on any expectation of how that money or that opportunity can come to you. So
Yes.
I'm like, okay, well, let's just play. Let's just ride this wave of this idea that I could be an 8-figure entrepreneur. So then I'm like, well, what would I do next? If I believed I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur, then I need to believe I'm an 8-figure entrepreneur. So I really started to go, well, this feels outrageous, but what just happens if I start to affirm, or I have a mantra, I declare this outrageous thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I built a custom declaration for myself that it was all about, personalized single sentence that says who I am, the result that I wanted, and what I do. Not the how, not how I'm getting it,
Yes.
but what I do. So at the time, mine was my name is Taylor Proctor, and I'm a successful 8-figure intuitive business strategist and confidence coach.
Ooh, I
So
love this. Oh my gosh.
single sentence, easy to remember, says who I am, the result I wanted, which is the 8 figures, and what I do, intuitive business strategist and confidence coach. Now, that has shifted since then. I just am full of ownership of, hey, I'm a business coach. But in that, I started to say that declaration every chance that I got. So at the time, I was walking outside daily for like 45 minutes a day and pacing actually outside on my back patio. So 45 minutes pacing back and forth. My name is Taylor Proctor. I'm a successful 8-figure intuitive business strategist and confidence coach. Turn around. My name is Taylor Proctor. I'm, pacing back and forth saying this. I even went and visited a friend who lives in a city 2 hours away from me. And on the drive there, instead of listening to music or other podcasts or anything, I was like, all right, my name is Taylor Proctor. I'm a success, 2 hours of saying this and saying it in different ways and all of those things. But really, it was all about declaring the outrageous and embracing the identity of someone who is an 8-figure intuitive business strategist and confidence coach, right? Embracing
Yes. The identity.
identity
Yes.
is huge.
It's huge.
So, first things first, it's all about foregoing those expectations. We're not trying to put a how, a why, a when on it. We're not paying attention to that. It's just, all right, here's this idea. Let's ride the wave, see where we go. And in that, I realized, well, I don't believe that I'm the kind of person that could be an 8-figure business owner, 8-figure entrepreneur. So I'm going to tell myself over and over and over and over and over again that I am.
Yeah.
So
Affirming
in
it.
that,
I love it.
it's so good, so good. So in
Yes.
that, about a week and a half later, from thought coming into my head to being like, what do we got to lose? Let's try this out. I had an invitation to go to a conference. Now, full transparency, uh, I had no idea what this conference was. Like, I
I've
was a
so
guest on
been there.
someone's podcast in like 2018. They'd continued to invite me to events. And I just always missed it because they would invite me on LinkedIn, and I'm not the most active on LinkedIn. So I'd always just catch it a week after it happened. And I always felt so bad. And so I'd caught one before it had happened and was like, yeah, I'll come. So that event was coming up, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going for, but I'm there, I'm supporting, it's great. And it's about 2 hours away from where I live, heading up north. So it's a Saturday morning, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to go. Right? Like, let's be honest, we've all been there. And
Yeah.
on top of that, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going for. I'm just going to support, which is fine, great. But also in my head and my heart, I was like, oh, I don't want to go. And I don't want to go because I have to get all ready. It's 2 hours away from where I live. It starts at 9 o'clock, which means I've got to be out the door by 7, which means I got to get ready by, at 6. So it was just all these things kind of going through my head being like, no, I just wish I could be lazy and hang out on a Saturday instead. But thought came into my mind, that intuition piece, which we'll talk about how important intuition is, but came in and was like, no, you need to go. So I was like, okay, don't be lazy. Opportunities come when we show up, right? So I'm
Yep.
like, all right, we're going to go to this event. So in that, I go to this event and I end up meeting this woman. And there's like a networking 10-minute break and we were crossing paths in the networking. And she goes, so how come I don't know you? And jokingly, I'm like, flip my hair. I don't know. How come you don't know me? Like, just be funny. And she goes, well, I need to know you. So like, let's exchange phone numbers and maybe have some time to talk next week. Now, this is on a Saturday. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. And I've never seen her before, never met her before. I know briefly what she does because we were networking. And so we were talking about it. So Monday morning, she messages me and says, hey, so where do you live? I would love to invite you to come to my house and just talk and connect more. So I tell her, and turns out, and at the time I lived in my house like 5 years, turns out she lives 7 minutes down the street. We have never crossed paths ever. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's totally doable. I can come by. So we set a time to come by and we go to meet, and she's sharing with me kind of about her business. And then she asks me about me. So I share about me and I share a little bit of my work history and my background and all of these things. And I'm thinking, one, this is just a great collaboration, network, get to know each other opportunity. Two, maybe she's trying to sell me into her program because it's all about TV show hosting and podcasting and things like that. And I'm pretty rock solid in that area. So I'm thinking, oh, she wants to sell me to be in her program. Turns out she looks me in the eyes as I finish talking about my background, who I am, what I do. And she says, yeah, I need you to be a member of my executive team. And I'm going, okay, like, sure. What does that look like? Like, what position? What are we talking about here? And also, I've left corporate, so I'm not really looking for a job, but as an independent contractor coming through my business, that's something that I'd be willing to look at. So we talk about it. And I get this feeling, and we can talk more thoroughly about this, but I have discovered over the years that there are over 60, that is a 60, different ways that you can receive intuition as an individual. And for each person, it's like a fingerprint. It's completely unique. So I spent years being like, well, that coach just got chills and it tells her that everything's great. And these people are getting these random downloads and having $10,000 days. And I'm not feeling any of that. Like, I was so frustrated and so mad. And then I realized that your intuition is like a fingerprint. And for me, when it comes to business strategy and direction of my life, my biggest intuitive superpower, my strength, is a sense of adventure. So when she's saying to me, hey, come be a member of my executive team, specifically it was chief operations officer. And I had to really look in and go, okay, intuitively, like, does this feel right? And with a sense of adventure, it's like going and hiking up a mountain. Where if you're all about it, you're like, cool, I'll put on these thick wool socks that help me not get blisters. And I'm going to carry a 20-pound backpack with my water, my snacks, and my dog's poop bags. Right. And I'm just going to be so excited. And this next turn, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful view and vista. And this next turn, oh, the top of the mountain's almost there. It's going to be so great. Like, you're excited. It's an adventure versus, oh man, I got to wear these thick, heavy socks and my backpack is so heavy. And when I turn this bend, are we done? Like, can I just turn around? Can I sit down and rest and then just maybe not finish? Like, I just don't even care about hiking this mountain. And neither is wrong. But for me, when it's like that, oh, I'm excited. Like, I can put on my backpack and conquer this challenge or engage in this activity or connect with these people. Like, then I know that it's an aligned and congruent action for me.
Yes, so, I love this.
when she offers this opportunity to me, I have that intuitive sense of adventure. I'm going, yeah, let's do this. So end up signing a contract and I'm getting monthly contractor pay. Plus, I negotiated for some equity in the company. So within the span of 2 weeks from having the initial idea of I could be an 8-figure entrepreneur, I was like, we got to forego the expectations, declare the outrageous, don't be lazy, go to those activities, those opportunities. And I really tapped into my intuition. So after I signed this contract, as I go into my first day, right, which is precisely 2 weeks from the time that I had the initial thought, go to my first day and it's awesome. And she's talking to me and she says, yeah, also we're already partnered with an M&A broker, that's mergers and acquisitions, and we're looking to help sell the company within 3 to 5 years. And we're looking to sell it for $1 billion or more. And I go, okay, sure, whatever. That sounds great. And she goes, yeah, and I want you to work with our M&A broker very specifically as the COO to make sure that we are on track to be able to do that. Yeah, no problem. So I meet with the M&A broker, everything's good. And I end up coming home because I had spent the day with her at her house. It is remote, but I was at her house for that first day. And I end up coming home and I go, well, wait a minute. I signed for equity in this company. So I pull out my contract. And I had signed up for 1% equity ownership in this company. Now, for those of you that are mathy, you've already jumped to it. I am not, despite the math. And I was like, okay, what's 1% of $1 billion, which is exactly $10 million, which, my friends, is 8 figures.
So cool. Oh my gosh. It is so cool. And the coolest thing about this, Taylor, you're talking about like some of the key ingredients to the feminine money mindset too. You're talking about intuition. You're talking about relaxing into it, right? You didn't have to attack it, right? Even though you did like attack the sense of adventure, like you attacked that mountain, right? Like that was so incredibly fun for you. You're talking about a sense of play. You're talking about a sense of enjoyment, creativity, like really leaning into your gifts, your talents, like who you are. And this is what's amazing. Like when you leaned into that feminine piece of you, look at what shows up,
Well,
right?
and what shows up out of the blue. I'd never met her
Yeah.
in my life. I met her 2 hours away from where we actually live. I had never heard of her business. I had built up my career so that when I was talking to her, I was just sharing naturally. And she's like, yep, I need you to be a member of my team. Her using her intuitive superpowers and strengths to determine and discern, yes, this is somebody I need to be working with. Right. But it is crazy to me that it just dropped. Even now, it's been a few years from this happening, and even now I'm like, how did this just drop out of the sky into
Right?
my lap? And that's really where it's like, yeah, you've got to follow your intuition. You've got to release those expectations. And I would say the
Yes.
releasing and foregoing those expectations is a
Yes.
huge part of the feminine flow, because the second
Yes.
you put expectations on it, you're trying to control the situation, you're trying to control the narrative. And then when you don't hit those manifestation goals because you were so in control, then it starts this downward spiral of identity crisis and who am I to be doing this, and maybe I shouldn't even be in business, and it just causes all these problems. But when we can forego the expectations and trust it's going to work, well, embracing the identity of who we want to be and the kind of person that these things work out for, then it is all about following the intuition. And it's crazy how these opportunities just fall from
Show
the
up.
sky.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so much easier. Like you're saying, it's so much easier than we make it. I think about like, I still sometimes look at like my business. Like in kindergarten when they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like teacher, maybe, I don't even remember what else I said, but I was like, teacher. I was all about teacher. And I went for that, got through college as a teacher, right? And so I totally manifested that. But then I had all this trauma, I had all this stuff coming up, and healed it with the power of God, is literally what I say, right?
Mhm.
And, after you've been through something that intense, and I'm not going to get into how bad it was, but it was really bad. And you heal that, you feel like this overwhelming sense of gratitude, right? And so I'm in this prayer one day and I'm like, Lord, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like, my life is so full. And I kid you not, I hear "E- everything has a price. Like, I literally hear this and I'm like, well, what's the price? And he says, now I want you to go teach these concepts, right?
Mhm.
And I'm looking at myself like I'm this little podunk kid from a podunk town, right? In a podunk state. Like, you think podunk, I am it, right? And it's like, me? You want me to do what now? Like come again, right?
Mhm.
But you're right. Like, there's so many different types of intuition. Like, mine is total download. I hear things very, very clearly, right? It lights up in my gut, but that sense of adventure is there too. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I got thinking about that and I'm like, okay, like, let's lean into this. Let's start teaching people how to heal from trauma. Let's start teaching people how to create money. Let's start teaching people how to actually embody this feminine money mindset, right? Let's start doing this. And it was insane because last year, leaning into these concepts even more, I went from $25,000 in my business in 2023 to hitting 100,000 last year, right? Yeah, and it's these same concepts, it's these same principles that you're talking about. And the thing is you're right. Like, we don't always need to know the how. We just need to know that we are.
Yep, exactly. And timeframes. I'll even say expectations of timeframes. Like we've heard our whole lives, when you set a goal, make sure to make it specific. And in there, it's time bound, right? That's the T,
Mm-hmm.
or SMART goals, right? It's time bound. There's their T. And what I found was if I had been trying to put expectations even on the time frame
Mm-hmm.
of this opportunity coming along, I never would have fathomed in 2 weeks. Now, granted, I shared like the four things I did. There are four other things I did in that 2 week period, equaling 8 total things that I could say very specifically helped me get to this point. But it is taking a look at the identity and then saying, okay, when it happens, it happens. And once you can adopt the identity, that's when the ball starts rolling so much faster. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you've seen that too, like
Yeah.
adopting the identity of being a coach, a teacher, right? You already were a teacher, but this is a teacher in
Mm-hmm.
a different capacity,
It
and
is.
teaching your
Yep.
audience these things and from a space of vulnerability and all of these components. Once you're able to adopt that, not just the idea, but you as a person that this is what I'm
Yes.
called to do, changes the game.
Yes. And this is what's amazing too, is you can do this with just about anything. It's not just money. You can do this with your health. You can do this with your family. Like, new fun story. Okay, like, total new fun story. I have 6 kids, right? I'm a mom of 6 kids. And uh I have always wanted a daughter. Always wanted a daughter that I could put bows on. She was girly. She loved these things, right? Like, I wanted that so bad. Well, my first baby came along, it was a boy. Second baby came along, it was a boy. Third baby came along, it was a boy. Fourth baby came along, it was a boy. And then I was told I probably wouldn't be able to have any more kids, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just adopt that I'm a boy mom,
Yeah.
right? I'm leaning into that. I'm gonna love it with all my heart and soul. And but I'm open to the idea of somehow having a girl. And when I started adopting that, I got a foreign exchange daughter in my life, right? From Switzerland, and she's still my foreign exchange daughter. Love her with all my heart and soul. She's still a total member of our family. We call her all the time. We talk to her all the time. We love her. But what was even more amazing as well, she was here, spending time with our family for that year. Um, I randomly found out I was pregnant again. Like we weren't planning on it.
Yeah.
And that happened to me be my little girl. It was my baby girl, right?
I
And I
love
remember
that.
finding out that I was pregnant with a girl. I cried and I cried and I cried. And go and lo and behold, a couple years later, I'm pregnant again with another little girl. And so like I got my two little baby girls at the very end of my family, plus my foreign exchange daughter, right?
Right.
They're all so girly. They have curls. We can put bows on them and they're happy, right? And so you absolutely can when you just remove the expectation. And that was the biggest thing because I was expecting to be a girl mom.
Mhm.
And I was disappointed every single time instead of really leaning into the beauty of these boys. Once I let that expectation go, look what dropped in my lap, you
And
know?
I would love to point out too, like the first daughter wasn't conceived in the
No.
way that you would have expected you to have a
Yes.
daughter. And so it's the same concepts of if you can forego those expectations, it opens it up for it to come to you in any myriad of ways, which
Hmm.
then allows you to be like, and she is my daughter and she is girly. And then that's even more like, I love this. I want more of this. And then you get more conceiving of the idea, if you will, but conceiving of your
Yes.
daughters in a more traditional sense.
Yes. And that was what was insane. And so, you see these things happening over and over and over again. And the thing is, the human mind is, especially I think almost in women, especially where we need that safety and that security, right? We're afraid sometimes to take that risk. We're afraid sometimes to make that step, you know? But it's like you're saying, when you let go of that expectation, I bet anybody listening to this podcast, right? You can find similar stories to like what I'm saying and what Taylor's saying. It's worked for me in money, it's worked for me in my family, it's worked for me in so many different ways just once I dropped that expectation, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've even done it with cars where and this is maybe a story for a different time, but I had on a list that I just put up on my wall at some point and didn't look at for a year, but I was like, yeah, I would love to have a Porsche. I'd love to buy it in cash. It would be cool if it had a sunroof, right? But I didn't really have any expectations of it happening. And I ended up manifesting two limited edition Porsches that are convertibles and that are
She
orange,
told me this story, and I'm
right?
sitting here like, yes, I know, I get it, I love it. I seriously freaking love this. This is so cool. Like, and that is what's really key about this. So, I think that it does, you talked to a little bit about like, helping women remember why they're in business. And I think we're actually really leaning into this exact same concept here because I think we get away from why we're in business and why we started business in the first place when we are so embodied in the expectation. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because when we look at, so what I do is I love to say I help entrepreneurs get good at business so they can get
Mm-hmm.
back into the heart of why they got into business in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it really is taking a look at it's almost like somewhere a switch has flipped when you say you're an entrepreneur. Now you've got to hustle like crazy and you've got to do this way and it's got to be right and you put all these expectations on yourself, on your business, and
Mm-hmm.
I would say most importantly and definitely don't want to do on your audience and your clients.
Yes.
I
That
have
was,
an expectation. I'm busting my butt to make things
yes.
work. I'm doing it the quote unquote right way. I'm doing what the experts say, and my audience isn't engaging. And I start to resent my audience, which then means
Yes.
that I'm in this full resentment of my audience and my business. And it causes this downward spiral, and we lose the heart of why we got into business in the first place, which for
Yeah.
different people can be different things, right? It could be, hey, I got into business because I want to help people. Could
Mm-hmm.
be I got into business because I wanted to have more free time and flexibility with my kids. I wanted to grow something with my kids. It could
Yeah.
be that, and it could be, hey, I wanted more cash income coming in. That's fine. There's no judgment on the reason why you got into business, but it's so important to remember that heart of your business because
Yes.
otherwise those expectations take over. And I'm going to come back to identity because I think this is so freaking important,
It
right?
is. Oh
When
my gosh,
you have
yes.
the identity of I'm a business owner, great. But when you have the identity of that switch flipped, I'm a business owner and I hustle and everything's crazy and I'm not, I have to do it the right way. And why aren't people listening to me? And why aren't sales happening? It creates all of these issues that don't need to happen if we can forgo the expectations, declare the outrageous and who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be lazy. I'm not saying, hey, just wish it and it will come. There's things you need to do,
Oh,
but
yes.
having it be led by your intuition helps you take that aligned and congruent action that allows you to forego the expectations, adopt the identity, and inevitably, you've seen this, I've seen this, we've seen it in our clients' lives.
Yeah,
Inevitably, that success and coming back to the heart happens.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really funny because you're right. Like I had somebody ask me a little while ago, like, why are you in business? Like, why did you do business, right? And they were like pumping out like all these numbers, and granted, like I like the numbers, I like the big numbers, I like the commas, right? I totally
Right.
do. But it wasn't as exciting to me as actually getting in and seeing people change, like women actually claiming like their femininity, claiming their birthrights, right? And claiming their ability to create money and to create cash and to create impact and really, really stepping into who they are. Like that's why I started business,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like when you lean into that, it's very easy to trust that the money is just going to come. It's just going to show up because you're living in love. And that is literally what our universe works off of. You know what
Yes.
I mean? It
Mhm.
is literally putting yourself in the flow of receiving and in the flow of the universe and getting everything that you want, everything that's coming to you, everything. That's what's
Oh,
amazing about this.
so good. Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Okay. So you were telling me a little bit about too, like the I move theory. Like
Yes.
explain this. Like I loved it when you were saying this, but this is definitely such a golden nugget for this audience. They need to hear this.
Absolutely. So, what it is the IMOVE method, and it stands for intuition, marketing, operations, velocity, and execution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people would say, oh, let's just take out the I and do the move method. I know I need to do marketing. I know I need to get my operations in place. I know I need to have a strategy that adds velocity. I've got to execute. But no,
No.
because how many times? I mean, I'll raise my hand before I figured out my intuitive strengths. I would just do things because I thought that's how they needed to be done. And it was like, here's what some marketing expert said to do. And I mean, I have a background in corporate marketing, 17
Mm-hmm.
years. Like I knew what to do and I would do it and it just didn't quite work ever.
Yes. I
And it
hear
was like,
you.
why isn't this catching? Why isn't this is supposed to be working? And what it was is because it wasn't led by intuition first. Because when we can take, and I've said this a few times, aligned and congruent action,
Yes.
when we are led by our intuition, everything else starts to happen. So if we go
Yes.
through the I move method, when you take aligned and congruent action, it leads to massive momentum in your marketing because it's
Yep.
connected, it's aligned, which then gives you the opportunity to build operational processes that allow you to scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you velocity, which then you can pick and choose strategies that help you get more velocity without burning out. And ultimately, all of that comes together so that you can execute with ease. Because if it's not aligned and congruent, it feels like you're hiking up that damn mountain
Right.
and you hate it, but you know there's supposed to be a payoff at the end, but you're twisting your ankles, you're falling down, you're out of water, you just want to turn back, but you can't because you're a business owner, right? We don't want to do.
Right.
We want to take the aligned and congruent action to get that momentum in your marketing, to build those operational processes that allow you to get velocity without burning out
Yes.
and execute with ease.
Yes, exactly. And especially if you're a female entrepreneur, intuition is key. It is
Yes.
so key. It is one of the key pieces to your clarity. I talk about the three C's, the clarity, the connection, and the communication. All three of those things are very key in the female entrepreneur world, right? And if without that piece, that intuition, that clarity is not there. It's
100%.
absolutely not there. And, I'm thinking about, as you're saying, like these business experts, they tell you to do this and you follow that and it like doesn't work for you. Again, you're right. It comes back down to that intuition. Like I look at Grant Cardone.
Mhm.
for an example, right? I think the man has built some amazing things, totally respect him. Would I do business like him? No. Right? Like, no, I wouldn't do it because number one, he does it in a very masculine way,
Right.
right? It's out of my nature. It's completely and utterly out of my nature. And so, the other thing about the intuition that I really love, and you've even said this, is it's also getting to know you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And this is why, like, I talk too about like having your relationships align. This is so key. It's almost like having the planets align for you. It's the same thing, like having your relationships align. But that again comes down to
Yep.
knowing yourself well enough to understand which one of the 60 different types of intuition you are, right? And moving in that direction. That is what's key.
And if I
Go ahead.
can, a couple points on that too is part of that is an experimentation mindset.
It is.
Right? So if you're into like human design or astrology or enneagrams or four tendencies or strengths finders, like let me just list off all the personality quizzes and types that I can think of. But
Right?
ultimately, it's you try that on and say, okay, there's some components of this that I like and I appreciate. Can I try that on and see if this is me?
Right.
And that experimentation, I think, is so huge. But also, I want to point out because as a business coach, one of the things that I love to do is not tell my clients what they should do. That's not coaching, first off. But second
Right.
off, how do we tap into their intuition? So I love to ask, even if you don't know your intuitive strengths, right? I still love to ask, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how does this feel?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's anything lower than a 7, scrap it. That is
Yeah.
an uphill battle that you're trying to push through because you think you woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a client and she was like, yeah, I've had on my list. I know I need to do it. I need to smile and dial. I need to do cold calls, all these things. And I said, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's that feel? And she goes like 4. And I'm like, okay. And then we're talking about her getting out and networking and speaking from stages and all these things. I said, hey, scale 1 to 10, how's that feel? And she goes, 9. I'm like, okay, well, if we invest our time, effort, and energy into the 4, we're going to get 4 results. We invest our time, effort, and energy into the aligned action that's a 9, we're going to get 9 results, right? Like
Yes.
level 9 results versus level 4 results. And so it's really about the experimentation of, okay,
Yes.
who do I want to be and what does this feel like and testing it out. But then also, even if you're like, okay, my intuitive strengths is sense of adventure, I could still be like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good does this feel? And if
Right.
it's a 10, done. If it's a 7, 8, or 9, you ask yourself, what would I do to make this a 10?
Right.
And
Oh, I love this.
the intuitive actions will come. But anything 6 or lower, scrap it. It's not an aligned action. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that somebody told you need to do, or you read a blog post or Instagram post about it and thought, I need to do that to be successful. And that's an expectation.
Exactly. Exactly. And so once we get out of the expectation, that's when we get into, like you're saying, that intuitive aligned actions where we're finding out like the things that we really love doing,
Yep.
right? And leaning into that. Like absolutely leaning into that. And and I'll even say like leading into sometimes some of the things that scare us, right? Because
Yep.
like, just to give you an example, and obviously it's not happened, so I'm not gonna say this is exactly what's going to happen, but I keep getting this feeling like with my book, right?
Mhm.
That it's going to be really big. And my book coach, she's been a several times New York Times bestseller, right? She's saying the same thing. Like this book is going to be huge, right? And that means for me, more exposure. And
Yeah.
now again, here I am, like this kid that's like, oh man, do I want that? Do I want the exposure? But trusting it, trying it on, you know? If worst case scenario, I might need to scale back a little bit. But the thing is like you're saying, try that on.
Well,
You
and
never know.
if I can
Go ahead.
apply that to the IMOVE method. So
Mm-hmm.
you've been intuitively called to create a book.
Mm-hmm.
That book, your full idea and concept and feeling and vibe of it is it's going to be big. Well, a book is a momentum and marketing piece,
Yep.
right? So you're doing your intuition led into this marketing book, right? This book that will help you market you, your business, speak to the ideal clients, etc. And you're like, I have the feeling it's going to have so much momentum behind it. It's going to be big.
Yes.
And then you even said, and even if it's so big, I can kind of scale down. Well, that's your operations. You're looking at your operations and how you navigate in this world and how your business can be automated or simplified or scaled up or scaled down. So there you're doing that. And then it's like, okay, I feel comfortable with this. It's good. I'm doing it from a space without burning out because of the way that this has been going, right? I can scale back my operations. I can still push for marketing on the book. It's all led. So I'm not getting burnt out and my business is getting the velocity. And then when it comes down to execute on a new idea or just to continue with your marketing campaigns or meeting with clients, even, you're able to execute with ease because it's all working because it started out with the aligned and congruent action and idea.
Exactly. Oh, I love this. Okay. Taylor, I literally probably could record a 3 or 4 hour conversation with you. It'd be so fun. Like truly. But we do have to wrap up. But we're totally going to have you come back and talk about a little bit more about IMOVE and like the intuition and, these pieces. Like, I think this is going to be so key. But I would love to know, where can people find you if they want to call you or get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
Actually, I would love to recommend 2 things. One, answering your question about, well, 3 things. One, answering your question about how can you get a hold of me? Super easy. I'm Get Good at Business on pretty much everywhere. So if you go to getgoodatbusiness.com, easy way to find me, check my socials, email, contact, all of that good stuff. But I want to also invite our listeners today that if you were like, how do I get connected to my intuition? And Taylor mentioned that she did 8 crazy things and she only shared 4. I have a free video email series. I think the longest video is like 5 minutes. For 8 days, you'll get a new video in your email highlighting one of the things I did to get the 8-figure opportunity. So if you go to go.getgoodatbusiness.com/8 crazy things, then you can sign up for that very free, very awesome, very deep dive email series. And then for those of you that, if you're also going, well, I'm really interested in the IMOVE method and I'm rock solid on intuition, but maybe I could be better in my operations or my execution, or you're just curious about where you may fall, on getgoodatbusiness.com, we have a free quiz that you can take and see your percentages within each area of the IMOVE method, and get some recommendations on how to help support you in the areas where you may want to improve. So if you go to getgoodatbusiness.com, it's very top of our page, is that free quiz that you can take for the IMOVE method and get that assessment as well.
I love it. Oh my goodness. All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with Taylor and I today. We are absolutely going to have Taylor back because as you can tell, she's a ray of sunshine. Like, she's so much fun. So much fun to have. Oh, you're welcome. Like, thank you for being here. So, all right, you guys. I will see you guys next week. Thanks, Taylor, for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.